doing this. Why don't you get up, wiggle, stretch. You can sit if you want, just unless you're one of those people who can't carry the chair in the bucket. Right.
You're going to wiggle too?
Am I going to wiggle too? I did wiggle. Okay. We're supposed to be talking about data collection. So let's start with some, where did it come from, and some definitions. It's not a new thing. Some of you may be familiar with the video. I actually did it in 1992. I was 7 years old at the time, of course. Talking about the data collection that was happening then. So let me give you a little bit of history because it will put some things in context for you. I first got involved in the 90s in the state of Pennsylvania, and I got involved because I got a call from a mother who said her 8th grade son came home from taking an 8th grade standardized assessment in the state of Pennsylvania called the Educational Quality Assessment, the EQA. And her son came home and said some really bizarre things. And she didn't believe him. And so she went down to the school. And she said, my son came home and said he took this really odd test, and he can't be right. So could I see the test? And the school said, no. And she said, no, see, mother. Mother sign? Mother? You have to show it to me. And the school said, no. And she's a very persistent lady. And so she dug and dug and dug, and she finally got the test, and it was called the Educational Quality Assessment. And her son was right. So when you read the EQA, there's a section called citizenship, and I actually don't have it. There's a section called citizenship, which you would think would say, how many branches of government are there? How many people are in the Supreme Court? It did not test that. The sample question was, there was a group called the Midnight Marauders. They are a vandalism group. They go out at night and draw graffiti. I would join the group if my mother caught me. My best friend joined the group. There was no place for the child to say no. It was testing for standard thresholds for behavior change. Next section. Question. You just found out that your father is being transferred to Pitt for his job. How much time would you spend doing each of the following? Crying, having a tantrum, packing, saying goodbye to my friends. They were testing for willingness to adapt to change without protest. The EQA results, this mother actually wound up suing and found out that there was this teeny little bit of federal money involved in the development of the EQA, so she sued the state of Pennsylvania. She won. And Pennsylvania had to enter into a consent agreement with the U.S. Department of Education saying they wouldn't test these things anymore. After the district got the EQA, what they got back was what were called curricular improvement modules to make the children do better on the test the next time, so that they would be more adaptable to change without protest, and how you be more of a group member as opposed to an individual. Those curricular modules were divided down into subgroups. This curriculum works on minority children of this economic status with a single parent. This curriculum works on white kids who are upper middle class who have 2 parents. This curriculum works on boys. This curriculum works on girls. How did they know? There had to be a database, didn't there? That's how they knew. The databases are not new. They are, if you go into, it's called the National Center for Education Statistics, and start digging around, you're going to find them. The databases are used to determine the direction of curriculum, and eventually, by the time we got involved in the 90s, it was called School to Work, so that we would determine this is what career you're supposed to have. So where are we now? You know, my granddaughter is going to be 2 next month. She's adorable. And her mom and dad, her dad's an architect, and her mom is a fashion designer, so they both work, as many of our young families do today. And so she attends a daycare center. And my son just last week said, the daycare center wanted to do this thing, and Mom, what do you think? And he sent me a photograph of what they wanted to do, and I'm reading down it, and it says assessment. So So I called him back and said, why would you assess a 1-year-old, honey? And he said, well, I didn't see that. They just said they would, they just wanted to know how well she was doing. Honey, she's 1. Unless she has some serious disability where there really is a reason to assess, we don't assess 1-year-olds. And frankly, daycare center workers aren't really qualified to assess 1-year-olds anyway. But all of that information is collected. One of the states that I've been involved in is the state of Delaware. Delaware actually got phase 1, Race to the Top money. So in many ways, they're far ahead of you. And in Delaware, the daycare centers are told that every year they have to assess the children in the center, and the assessment information goes into the database. They're assessed on their language development, on their social skills. These are kids 1, 2, 3. And it's observation by the daycare workers that now becomes part of their profile. Once the children are in the database, they never come out of the database. So the assessment is now not just school, it's below school. Well, where did that come from? The federal government passed legislation that was called the America Competes Act. And the America Competes Act mandated that the states create what was called a state longitudinal data system. If you look at the initials, SLDS, State Longitudinal Data System. It was a P through 20 system. P was preschool. K through 12 is what you think. 13, 14, 15, 16 is college. 17, 18, 19, 20 is the rest of your life. So it follows you all the way into the workforce. Before the states could even apply for Race to the Top money, they had to apply for what was called the State Fiscal Stabilization Fund. It was part of the Obama administration's stimulus package. It was a $53.6 billion appropriation to the U.S. Department of Education. Race to the Top was $4.35 billion of that bigger amount. The Stabilization Fund money came first. The states got it in 2 pieces. They had to agree to 4 things. One of them was moving toward the standards, getting them ready for Common Core, and one of them was establishing the P through 20 state longitudinal data system. They applied first. They got a piece. Then they had to send an update saying, here's how far we are in implementing all of the steps, and then they got the rest of their stabilization money. They couldn't even apply for Race to the Top until they had achieved the goals of the Stabilization Fund grants. They had to attend training sessions. And in the training sessions, they were told, okay, well, what elements have to be in this data system? Remember, the elements were mandated by the America Competes Act. There were 12 of them. Number 1 and number 7, enrollment information, transcript information. Enrollment was 1, transcript was 7. That sounds really innocuous. Okay, well, so what? Until you think about what you tell the school when you enroll your child. They know where you live, birth date, who that child lives with, family structure, they might know your faith. You give them your vaccination records and health records for your child. If there's a school lunch program, they may ask for your IRS tax return to verify your income to see if you qualify for the school lunch program. Transcript information, all disciplinary records. I didn't say Pennsylvania, as I said. Last year we had a 7-year-old who was eating a Pop-Tart. And the little one took a couple bites of the Pop-Tart and looked at the Pop-Tart and said to the teacher, "Look, doesn't this look like a mountain?" And the teacher went, "No, it looks like a gun," and suspended him because it was a very dangerous Pop-Tart now. It's a gun, very dangerous. But on his permanent record, he was suspended for terroristic threats. He was 7. It was a Pop-Tart! But his disciplinary record says terroristic threats. And that's not in the database. If your child commits a crime out there, when they turn 18, the record is sealed. If they do the same thing in the school, the record follows them forever. Your children don't have the same rights as felons. The database, the states are having trouble managing the databases, so they're like shipping data. You've all heard about eBlue that's gotten lots of press. Not getting press much more pervasive. There's a National Student Clearinghouse of data. That includes in your transcripts all information that they collect, including children's height and weight if they're in a sports team, part of the database. You cannot stop the collection of data. You cannot control who gets it. You cannot control what it's used for. Once the children are in the database, they're there forever. When you read the federal documents in the training sessions, what they say is, well, the data needs to go all the way into the workforce, so it's going to follow them the whole way. The data needs to be made available to researchers. It's really funny, in New York, they talked about how they give student-level data to researchers. But they protect the privacy of the data because they take the student identification number that the state has assigned off of your record and give it a false number. And then they tell the researcher your birth date and where you live and who you live with, and that you're in Mrs. Blumenspiel's 3rd grade class in the Oshkosh School District. But of course, they'll never be able to find that child, right? How ridiculous. The data systems require that the Department of Education now expand and link with the department, the offices, whatever you call your children and youth, or family and child social services, the child abuse people, the mental health people, the health, your regular health, Department of Health. The military wants access to the data. In Tennessee, they actually call it a 360-degree picture of the child because it's a complete dossier. Some states are attempting to lift the social security numbers off. In Pennsylvania, they're not allowed to put social security numbers on before you're 18. The legislature has actually forbidden it. So they get around it. Well, if I have your birth date and your address, I don't really need your social security number. You hear about privacy concerns, and I just got this today, so I will share it with you. This is from the state of Minnesota. A mother who the school, it was called Skyward, is their data system. And she, when she got on, her child, they all get iPads now, so the child got on, and when she opened up her child's account, 2 other children appeared on her family's private electronic school account. They were children she didn't know. She could see the children's first and last names, their middle initial, their date of birth, their graduation year, their school status, their student ID, their age, their gender, their language spoken, their vaccination records, and their phone numbers. And these were children she didn't know. The school district said that didn't happen. Don't you love when they do that? Well, no, that's not here. It's not done, no. It turned out she wasn't the only one. Over 80 families in that one school system had all of this information shared. And the district's like, well, okay, that won't happen again. But you said it didn't happen the first time, so why would I believe you? It's not private. It can be hacked. What is the purpose of the data collection? Why are they doing this? So Delaware, remember, they start collecting in preschool. And they collect all of this data, and it moves up. So by Delaware, by the time the children are in 8th grade, they have to have what's called a student success plan. That is a plan that this is what you're going to be when you get out of high school. It's like your career plan. And all of your high school experience is now going to be packaged around that career plan. Parents can look at their child's student success plan. They are not allowed to change it. It comes from the state. This is the career that has been selected for you. Here's how your high school goes. Parents can make comments, they can ask questions, and they must sign off saying they have viewed the plan, but they can't change the plan. So who's in charge? Not you. In Georgia, it's called a career matchmaker system. The child gets, based on all of the testing and all of the information that's been collected, they get a menu. That's your matchmaker. There's up to 10 choices in the menu. And the parents can pick from the 10 choices. But you can't step outside the menu. And the menu is begun when the child's 12. How many of you knew what you wanted to do when you were 12? I'm still figuring it out. And I'm, 15. The whole purpose is to change as we change the purpose of education from allowing each child to be the person that they were created to be to creating a workforce. The data system is the driving mechanism. This is what you're slotted to be. What else does the data system do? You know, this morning we talked about the invalidity, invalidity, that's not even a word, I made that up. Invalidity of the testing. But the tests do more than that. So we looked at the EQA. In the 1990s, Pennsylvania moved into a new system of testing called the Pennsylvania State System of Assessment, the PSSA. It was a matrix test. A matrix. Do you ever play Chinese checkers? You know, there's all the little marbles in the diamond? That's a matrix. So there were 10 forms of the test, each form being one of those marbles. And a matrix works as long as I absolutely randomly give, like if I'm going down the row, you're going to get Form A, Form B, Form C, Form D, Form E. If I mess it up in any way, so it's not totally random, the matrix won't work. So there were 10 forms of the test. But when parents went in to say, I want to see the test, you saw one form. You didn't necessarily see the form your child saw. So I sort of forced the Department of Education to let me come in and read all 10 forms. So I'm sitting there, and one of the assistant secretaries is sitting across the table from me to watch me read the test. And I'm reading through, and there's a story about a child who finds a wallet with money in it. And the whole story is about what did they do with the money. Do you keep it? Do you turn it in? What do you do with it? Get to the questions. First question, what did the child find? Literal comprehension, a wallet. Second question, if you found a wallet with money in it, would you keep the money? And I turned the paper around to the assistant secretary and said, do you read better if you say yes? Or do you read better if you say no? Or did you just test a child's honesty on a computerized state assessment? They just tested a child's honesty. How many children would even think to say, I'm not answering that question? None. Because it's a test. It's timed. They want to do well. So they just answer. And now you have it. Those assessments can be used to collect information. They can also be used, remember our would you do it if, and would you do it if, and would you do it if. Now that the tests are computerized, moving to computerized and computer adaptive, it actually says that the test can change in real time based on the child's answers. So in that, I can make it harder or easier. But in questions like, would you keep the wallet with money in it, I can circle you around until I get the answer that I want. Would you join the group if? If you think of it like a telephone call, you ever get a call from a telemarketer? You all did, right?
Yeah.
And we're all polite. Telemarketer, I'm a telemarketer. Hi. Hello. I'm selling purple shoes. Would you like to buy my shoes? And so first I say to you, do you wear shoes? And you say yes or no. Do you like purple? You say yes or no. Are you the principal shoe buyer for your family? That's a pretest. I'm finding out information about you. Now I'm going to tell you all about my purple shoes. They're wonderful, they're terrific, they're the best shoes ever invented. You will love them forever. That's a curriculum. I'm teaching you something. I get to the end. So, would you put that on your Visa or your MasterCard? That's the assessment. Did you learn what I want you to learn? If you say Visa, congratulations, you pass. I'm going to collect your information and you can graduate from this conversation. But if you say no, I'm going to say, oh my goodness. Well, what is your objection? I'm analyzing. You're going to tell me your objection, and I'm going to answer you. I'm reteaching. That's remediation. So can I put that on your Visa or your MasterCard? That's the retest. Most of us are polite. We let that person go through it 2 times before we say, okay, we really, I'm not actually going to buy the shoes. So you've done your job. Thank you so much for calling. And we hang up. But a child in a classroom sitting in front of that computer cannot hang up the phone. And the answers are recorded. And recorded and recorded. When you look at so much of what is happening inside these Common Core assessments that make no sense whatsoever when you talk about academic achievement, they make a lot of sense if you're collecting data points. And when everything that the child does in the classroom is collecting data, is involved in this kind of situation, you're collecting data points as you go. The GED test is now Common Core compliant. So the kids get a source text. And after they get the source text, they get a writing prompt. Remember, it's time. So the source text on global warming talks all about how global warming exists and it's caused by human activity and population growth and industrial activity. Global warming is the source of one of the hottest debates in America today. People are lined up on all sides of the political aisle, and scientists are lined up on all sides of the debate, pretty much everywhere you can think about. But the children in this situation are given one point of view, one set of information. And then they're told to write about it, and they're graded on the complexity of their response. But what if you don't agree with the information you've been given? You better know all the facts and figures out of your head. So if you agree, it's an open book test. But if you disagree, it's a closed book test. And the GED test determines whether or not you graduate from high school. And whether or what college you get into. And whether and how large of a scholarship you get. That's not testing, that's sorting in a computerized assessment. That source text has a section on American foreign aid to Afghanistan. It talks about what we do and how we do it and how the levels of foreign aid created a lot of poverty in Afghanistan, and that's why those poor Afghans flew their planes into the World Trade Towers. They weren't Afghans. They were Saudis, and they weren't poor. But the children won't notice that. And their responses are picked up. So what we're eventually doing is building a picture of the child, demographically, and then in terms of their attitudes, their values, and their achievement. And that picture is what is used to determine their career plans that the state will give them in the future. When we say that this is fundamentally changing education in America, it isn't just that it's dumbing down academics or denying our kids the ability to have the correct literature. It is fundamentally changing the way that we structure society itself. Because that database is used to build your child's future. There won't be another Dr. Ben Carson in this system. In America, it has always been that your past didn't determine your future. But with the data systems, it will. It will determine your future. Those pictures that are being built of the children can be used to say, engineer, garbage man, doctor, janitor. And we don't have any way of knowing what was the decision-making point for determining who could move ahead and who could not move ahead. Is it your ethnicity? Is it your income level? Is it your religious background? Nobody knows. Because you're not in control. The data can be sold. It's not just made available to researchers, it can be made available to vendors. The new FERPA regs say anyone with a legitimate educational interest can have access to the student level data. How do you know somebody has a legitimate educational interest? They fill out a form and tell you that they do. And that's all they have to do. So, selling to your children. They're a wonderful marketplace. If you ever watch the commercials, you know it's about to be Halloween. So you're about to get clobbered with commercials with children saying, Mom, I want whatever toy was on television. Because children are great, they want us to buy stuff because that's what they do. They're kids. We do too. We just want to buy different toys. So it's a vending tool. People ask all the time, why is Bill Gates involved in this? It's kind of a no-brainer, isn't it? Yeah. Legitimate educational interest. And Mr. Gates has now been quoted in the Washington Post and in the Daily Caller they actually issued a statement saying, all the districts are going to have all this new technology. And I know you'll be surprised, that really just won't do it. It has to be Microsoft technology in the latest version and the latest equipment. If it's his technology and his software, it's his cookies. The databases are dangerous. This isn't a teacher's grade book. Look for ways to keep your children out. Talk to legislators. Pull through your own state's agreements Those of you who've seen others of my presentation know I always go to the contracts. What did the state sign with the federal government? What did they tell the federal government they were doing? Maine got stabilization money. You signed a contract. It's available online. Read what they told Washington they were doing. Because sadly, it's not a crime to lie to you. But it is a crime to lie to Washington on a document that they used to get funding. So if you want to know the truth, read the contracts. It's that you can go to the US DOE website, and if you go to my website, you can follow the links for, well, I did it for other states, but you'll be able to follow for yours. But that's how you know what they're doing. This is the almost silent underpinning of what's happening here, but it's incredibly insidious because it's going to control everything that happens in the future of your children. And you don't want to wait until you're Delaware. You're now working with people saying, I can't change my child's plan. It's a little late if you get to there. So pay attention to the basis. Pay attention to the information that's collected. And if you don't have to give it, don't give it. Easy example. Every year you get this form from your school. I'm going to borrow it. So it looks like this. It has its questionnaire. And they ask you about your income. It's for the school lunch program and if the school gets Title I. And the children are told everybody has to bring it back. And your parents have to answer it. And you do have to answer it. And in every answer you can write, not applicable. Not applicable. You have answered it. You have met the law. Send it back. You know, we're all a bunch of sheep. We give a lot of information we don't have to give. When one of my Munchkins was in kindergarten and the school sent home this form and it asked me about how they responded to discipline at home, I'm not answering that. And I went to the meeting and 4 other parents said, yeah, I was really uncomfortable with that question. I said, well, then why did you answer it? Well, because they asked. The best thing that I can see in Concord is how many parents are letting go of that because they asked. And beginning to say, these are my kids, not your kids. And one of your first steps is to deny them access to data. They have to send you the form. You don't have to fill it out. You can write not applicable. The school cannot ask for your social security. They can ask. You do not have to give them your social security number. It is not one of the required uses of a social security number. Don't give it to them. If they don't have it, they don't have it. At least make them go get it. Walk through your school and say, where is it that I can opt out of any data collection? And then do so. Opt out of the state test. If 5% opt out, it corrupts the data. That's why when you read through, you see 95% participation rates are what they keep aiming at, because if more than 5% opt out, it corrupts it. Opt out. New York last year had 40,000 kids say no to the test. This year they're aiming at 250,000. They've already started, they're already pushing, they already have their stuff rolling along. It denies them data. People say, what can I do right now? You can do that right now. That's something you can do immediately. That's my timer. The most important thing, we talked about this morning, don't do nothing. In data, say no everywhere you can say no. If you deny them the data, they can't act on it. And that is unbelievably effective in fighting the system. Thank you very much.